And he talked about Paul Harvey and the rest of the story. Sounds a lot to me like this was the rest of Mr. Kent's story. Because many of the things that he said were things that he said, but the actual eyewitnesses never said. It reminds me of when I was a kid, a couple of years maybe before Mr. Kent, but a whole lot of years after Mr. McCullough and Mr. Swirling. We used to, as kids, go down to Augusta, Georgia. My grandmother was from a small town called Trenton, South Carolina. It's in Edgefield County. And way before I was born, probably when I was still a twinkle in my parents' eye, she moved down there because there were just better opportunities to work. And so as I'm growing up in the early 70s, early 80s, my folks would drop me and my brother off down there and we'd hang out with my grandmother for a week. And back then, when you went to your grandmother's house, you couldn't stay inside and play video games all day because they didn't have them. So we had to go outside. We had to find ways to busy ourselves. We had to do things outside so we didn't break anything inside and get in trouble. So what we'd end up doing is my brother and I would go outside and we'd start throwing the football around for a little while. We'd toss the baseball around for a little while. Then we would start running around her house because my brother was older, so I tried to catch him. So we'd try to run around and see if I got any faster than he. At some point in time after lunch, we would make our way to this makeshift barber shop that my grandfather had built on the side of the house. And we'd sit down and we'd listen to the old man playing checkers, trying to pick up on some words we probably shouldn't have been hearing. We'd hear him slapping the checkers on the board saying, "King me," and all that kind of stuff. And we'd be learning some old man stories as kids. It was fun. We'd sneak into a little side of the barber shop and try to get his red man shoe. And the joke was we'd try to put a little piece in our mouth and try to hold it in there as long as you could before it burned a hole in your mouth. Or we try to hold it in there and try to see who could hold it the longest before you started gagging. This mischievous stuff that kids do. That's what we did. But at the end of the day, every evening, my brother and I would end up on the front porch. And my grandmother had a set of rocking chairs out there. And we would sit in those rocking chairs and start playing what I call rocking chair games. The first game, we'd sit down and then we'd try to see who could rock the fastest. I'm sure some of y'all have done this. Then we try to see who could rock the fastest and the farthest with your legs in the air. It's good ab work if you ever need to do it. We're trying to go back and forth and see how fast you could go with your legs in the air. And inevitably, the last thing that my brother Chris and I would do, we'd sit down and we'd rock the chair as far back as you could go without it falling over. And we'd do that. And we did that over and over and over. One evening, my grandmother came outside and she saw us standing those rocking chairs up on edge. And we knew we were in trouble. Again, this is the 70s, early 80s. This is the day of knockouts, not timeouts. We knew we were about to get in trouble. But my grandmother said something to me that stuck with me and it still rings in my head today. She said, the funny thing about rocking chairs is that they'll keep you busy, but in the end, they don't get you anywhere. The funny thing about rocking chairs is that they keep you busy, but in the end, they don't get you anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Mr. Kent, Mr. Swirler, Mr. McCullough, and that team over there has kept you busy with all of this stuff. But at the end of the day, the question still remains, what is the value of a human life? They have kept you busy with these insinuations that Cyrus was some young thug, some thug in training, running around Columbia, their words, with a loaded pistol, an empty backpack, and no money. Their words. They have kept you busy with this insinuation that this case has to be about and is only about, and is mostly about, a 14-year-old carrying a gun. We keep talking about why do 14-year-olds have guns? Why do children carry guns? And folks, let's be abundantly clear. Cyrus should not have had a gun. Period. No question. Nobody at the state stable has suggested that he should have. But let's put that aside for a second as we talk about what this case is really about, because he shouldn't have had a gun. No question. Question, are we still having this conversation if Cyrus is 24 years old, if he's 20 years old, if he's 34 years old, 44 years old? Are we having this conversation? Somebody wrongfully accused of stealing, chased out of the store after they tried to de-escalate everything that they could, running, falling down, running out of your chute, tripping, dropping phones, running farther, falling, busting your shin, gun spills out, you're still running. And according to the testimony that you heard from this chair, grown man, Andy Chow, state championship swimmer, 185 pounds, 200 pounds, about 85 pounds more than Cyrus, was right on top of him when he fell. And Dad was close by, in arm's distance. That's what the testimony was, not this, all this stuff. He was right on top of him. Question, as you listen to the elements of self-defense, not bringing on the difficulty, who would have had a claim of self-defense in this case? Cyrus? Being chased by two men, armed with a gun, on top of you after you've run 130 yards? Folks, I submit to you, as I'm walking from that tip back here, you get to the end of this corridor, that's 20 yards, 19 yards. Times 5 plus 30 more yards. That's how far he was chased. So who would have had a self-defense claim? So I'm suggesting to you that they keep insinuating these things, saying these things, because they don't want you to think about it. Again, I mentioned to you this to you multiple times. When you parked your cars, you didn't leave your common sense in the parking lot. Take it with you. Think about these things. Don't let them sway you with all of this mess and all this other stuff that takes us off of what the real issue in this case is. Don't let them do it. The defense kept weaving this narrative, again, that Cyrus is some young thug walking around the streets of Columbia, again with a loaded pistol, no money, and an empty backpack. I submit to you that, folks, if Cyrus was this thug that they keep telling you that he was, by showing you pictures and trying to get you thinking in that direction, we never would have gotten 130 yards down the road. He would have held court right at 7441 Park Lane Road. Cyrus would have been the judge, the jury, and the presenter of the sentence right there in that spot, if he was the thug that table wants you to believe that he was. But instead, what were his actions? Folks, he ran. He ran like a child. He ran from the adult. Let's think about who acted like the thug, the gangster. The person who chased him down the street, or the person who ran while he had a gun hidden. He ran out of his chute. How do we know that to be true? Because we see it on camera. Chute flies up in the air, and he keeps running. Doesn't stop, turn around, oh, I dropped my shoe, let me get that, because I'm gonna get in trouble if I go home with one shoe. He didn't do that. How afraid do you have to be to run out of your chute and not turn around to pick it up? Ponder on that for a minute. He ran further, phones fell out. They keep coming to you with this mess that, oh, he threw his cell phones out. What sense does that make? Did you leave your common sense in the parking lot, or did you bring it with you? How afraid do you have to be to drop 2 cell phones and keep running? Again, let's be very logical about this for a minute. 2 cell phones. We know how expensive they are. One cell phone belongs to you, and the other belongs to your mother. Do you mean to tell me that you are going to go home that day with one shoe and tell your mother, Mama, I lost my cell phone and yours too, and I didn't turn around to get it? You want that smoke? Do you really want to get what you would get if you lost 2 cell phones from your mother? But you know why he didn't turn around? Because he was scared. Because that man, armed with a .45 caliber pistol, and his son were chasing him for no reason down a road in South Carolina. Chasing him. Didn't turn around. Kept running further. Fell again. Hard. Dropped the backpack. And by the way, since they want to keep saying it was empty, it actually had some personal effects in it. There was an address in the backpack. Really. Fell. Dropped the backpack. Didn't stop and say, oh, stop guys. Let me go get my backpack. Let me go get the phones. Let me go get the shoe. Kept running away from them. Is that a thug? That's a kid who was scared of two grown men, running as fast as he could, as far as he could, trying to get home. But they wouldn't allow it. They would not. For some reason, they could not allow it. And then, at some point, as he fell, hit the ground, that gun comes out, that tack light comes out. Now, I'll suggest to you, as Mr. Kent talked, he keeps saying, well, he was picking up the gun and he was pointing the gun, all that kind of stuff. Stop, just stop. Because what we say is not evidence. I told you before, the evidence is what comes from this witness jury. There were 4 eyewitnesses who were not named Chow. Which one of them ever said they saw Cyrus Carmack-Belton point a gun? Which one? Which one? No. 4 of them. 3 different vantage points. Lori Carson, Kennedy Carson, mom and daughter. They told you they watched and they saw a straight line of what happened. Cyrus ran, fell, hit the ground, got up running, and that's when he was shot. Asked multiple times, well, did he turn at them? Did he point at them? Did he do anything? No. We never saw anything in Cyrus's hands. 2 witnesses, mom and daughter, vantage point at the front of the store. Didn't see any of that. Any of that. Devontae Bryant, driving, white Honda, threw on brakes so he wouldn't run over anybody as they ran in front chasing Cyrus. Asked as he rode by, did you see him point anything? Cyrus Carmack-Belton point, stop and point. No, he didn't. He didn't have anything in his hands. The book bag fell. He was flat. He fell hard. His hands were on the ground. He got up trying to run, and that's when he was started stumbling again and got shot. Again, trajectory. Here, upwards, to the left, making perfect sense that he's running away. Not pointing. Not pointing, like the defense wants you to believe. Remember the multiple times they tried to see with Dr. Durso, well, was he doing this and was he snaking and popping and locking? No, none of that was ever said. He was running, and when they tried to do that, he said, no, it's more consistent with the shooter being directly behind him. Folks, if he was turned in the direction that they want to believe, his spine would have been severed by that bullet. Common sense. You didn't leave your common sense in the parking lot when you parked today. You brought it with you. That again is why we went through that process. Some of you may think it was painstaking last week to sit you as jurors, because we wanted you to take the facts of this case. Not Paul Harvey, not Steve Harvey, not some other Harvey, but the facts of this case that came from this witness chair. Not some stuff that's speculated or what we can kind of come up here and start trying to come up with about moonwalking backwards and all this kind of stuff. None of that. The evidence that came from this chair. Did you hear that? Another witness. Jasmine Broadwater. Another vantage point. They're running directly to her. Did she say she ever saw a gun in Cyrus's hands? No. Did she ever say she saw Cyrus point? No. Never. Nobody with the last name that's not Chow says that ever happened. And interestingly enough, you saw in the video, after the shooting took place, who was walking around? Rick Chow. The officer had to tell him multiple times, stand still, don't touch evidence. I'm gonna charge you with obstruction if you keep messing around there. Move the gun, by the way. He and his family went to the store, came back, had plenty of time to talk about what they were going to say. Plenty. But at the end of the day, when Andy sat up here, there was nobody to protect him from cross-examination. Nobody. Nobody to protect him. There was conversation about a barrel. Andy says, I saw a silver barrel. Folks, I submit to you, there is a gun lock on here. This is not the condition of the gun. You'll see it on that video. The condition of the gun was this. That's a black barrel, right? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we talk about credibility and believability. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. One other thing that the esteemed table said is that Cyrus Carmack-Belton, again, wandering the streets with a loaded pistol, empty book bag, no money. Now, I'll take this on myself because at the end of the day, I'm the boss. And I'm the person who at the end of the day gets the opportunity to say, hey, we need to bring this witness or that witness. So y'all blame me for this one. This is my fault. I will say this, it's my fault. Maybe we should have brought in another expert. Maybe a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old who could talk to us about the intricacies of cell phones. My gosh, maybe they could tell you that if you hit the right click button on an app.
Yes, sure.
So maybe we should have had an expert to talk about apps on phones and the fact that in 2026, even back in 2023, you did not have to have cash in order to buy stuff. You can pay on your phone. Maybe that should be an expert that we call next time, since they made such a big stink about those things. Folks, Andy was an interesting person on the stand. And I'm sure that it's tough to have to sit in that situation and recall what was said and what wasn't said and what you thought about in those moments. But it was interesting to me that under direct examination, that testimony flowed, it was quick. Everything that he said was perfect, just came out like water. But then on cross-examination, and y'all had a chance to watch from your vantage point, that's the word of the week, vantage point. Every time he was asked a question on the cross-examination that wasn't pleasant, that actually required some type of thought process that may not go exactly how he rehearsed his testimony, eyes. To the point to where he said, well, my counsel said I couldn't. We don't want to know what your counsel told you. But every time a hard question came, his eyes went from here to there. Folks, I was taught a long time ago, when you lie, you got to remember what you said, right? And if you lie about the small things, then you can't be trusted with the big things, to tell the truth about the big things. So think about that for a minute, because when we talked to Andy, there was a back and forth about simple stuff, like through versus dropped, right? Like pulled versus pointed, which again, no witnesses not named Chow ever said the word pointed, like Chase versus followed. Why are we having conversations about Chase versus followed when you saw how fast they were going after him? Folks, I may not be the sharpest tool in the shed, but to me, running after requires you to be going after something for a purpose. Example, there's a kid, ice cream truck passes by the house, ding, da, ding, da, ding, da, ding, da, ding, da, ding. You miss it. You will go out the house and you run after the ice cream truck. Why? Because you want to catch it so you can get some ice cream. Simple. Or sitting, you wake up a little bit late for school and you hear the bus go by. You're missing the bus. You run after the bus. Why? So you can catch the bus and get on and get to school. Or maybe more recently, flying from Columbia to North Dakota. And there's a flight that first leg takes you to Charlotte, second leg takes you to Minneapolis. You get to Concourse A, your flight takes off in 28 minutes. What you gonna do? You're gonna run to Concourse C to catch the flight. Why? Because you don't want it to leak. You run with the purpose to catch. Folks, I ran after my wife for 2 years and I caught her. But do you think when I caught her, I said, hey, I want to give you directions about how to get to that dude so he can tell somebody else about something. Come on, folks. When you parked your cars, you didn't leave your common sense. They ran to catch. At the end of the day, what happened here is simple, and they don't want to admit it because it hurts. They ran after Cyrus emotionally. They were irritated. They were mad for whatever reason. They ran after him. They caught him. They caught up to him because he fell multiple times. They wanted to shake him down and get that bottle of water and then figure out what to do with the police later. That's why they ran. That's the simple truth. That's the simple truth. That gun spilled out, and then that man made a rash decision. He overreacted. Andy saw the gun, he said gun, and he shot him. There wasn't all this time to back up. No witnesses even say that he even backed up. They said they were advancing the entire time. Folks, don't let the defense rewrite the facts, because the things they talked about didn't happen that way. They didn't happen that way. For over an hour, Andy sat on that stand, and he said a lot of things. He said a lot of things. But did you ever hear the 2 words? I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I wrongfully accused this kid of stealing and chased him down the road. You know why? You didn't hear that? Because he's not. This is about product over people. This is about inventory. This is not about a person's life. Mr. Kent spoke about withdrawal. And he keeps trying to suggest that Andy Chow withdrew by doing this and coming backwards all this way and saying, hey, stop, hey, Dad, you gotta go. Nobody testifies that that happened. He doesn't have the last name of Chow. 4 people who don't know one another, who had to be subpoenaed to come to this court, spoke to you, and they never said that it happened, because it didn't happen. He did not withdraw. They kept going forward. They kept going forward. And ultimately, this gun was never pointed. But folks, I suggest to you, even if it was pointed, he was running in the opposite direction. Opposite direction. That's what the evidence shows by the way he was shot. It was in the opposite direction, trying to get away. I'll say this. It's offensive to hear the defense keep trying to characterize Cyrus as this young thug. But it's equally offensive to then try to characterize Andy Chow as Mr. Rogers. Rick Chow, the defendant in this case, is Mr. Rogers. You know, the man who chased a kid down, shot him in the back. And then they want to say, well, he was trying to help, clean vomit out of his mouth to resuscitate him. Folks, that's offensive. Because the last face that this scared child saw as he ran away was that man peering over him. Peering over him. And none of this happens if they stay their behinds in the store and use that intricate camera system that picked up on every angle. Could see everything from what he wore, the type of shoes that he wore, the direction he went, everything. A couple seconds is all it would have taken, just like it did in the store, to say, hey, you know what, we were wrong. But they didn't do that because they were overcome with something. Maybe it was meanness. Maybe it was malice. Maybe there's some nefarious intent in their heart. A reason for them to chase him and shoot him in the back and end his life. But again, never the two words that matter most, and I'm sorry or I made a mistake. However, none of them, because they're not. I talked to you about a poem by Omar Khayyam called The Rubaiyat. And I told you that I would link it all together. The moving finger writes, and having writ moves on, nor all your piety nor wit shall lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all your tears wipe out a word of it. Folks, that's a poem about time and how you can't erase what's been done. You can't go back and change what's been done. With all your piety, no matter how many degrees you got, how many doctorates you got, when you do something, it's there, it's done. And you can't reverse time. You may try, you may get up here and get on the stand and try to think your way through it and reason your way through it. But at the end of the day, what they did was murder. So in a more literal sense, eventually we're going to be asking that your moving hand come back and write these words. Because Rick Chow is guilty of the murder of 14-year-old Cyrus Carmack-Belton. Now, folks, you're going to have a chance to deliberate in a moment. And as you deliberate, you will apply the facts of this case to the law that the judge is going to give you in a couple of moments. And as you do that, I'm asking, Dale Scott is asking, Stephanie Taylor and Weston Lee, for all of us are asking that you return a verdict of guilty in this case. I'm just looking to make sure that I covered everything that Mr. Kent covered. I ask you to think one last thing, and I'm out of your face. We all know there are 50 states in the United States of America. But I think I've learned sitting in this trial that there are actually 51. There's the state of denial. The state of denial is where that man lives because he's denying that what he did was wrong. He's denying that he chased and killed that young child, Cyrus Carmack-Belton, who never pointed a gun at him. The witnesses tell you so. Not his son, who's got every motive, every reason to twist it around in order to protect his father. Denial that you, the jury, believe or will believe that what he did was wrong. Denial that at the end of the day, he believed that a human life was not more than that. Folks, it's for these reasons that the state of South Carolina is asking you to return a verdict of guilty, because Rick Chow is guilty of murdering Cyrus Carmack-Belton. Thank you for your time.